Hey everyone, welcome back to the Law of Attraction Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Keith. And today, my friend Megan Worth is back on the podcast. Megan, I'm so excited to have you here as always.
Thank you so much for having me back on. I'm very excited.
Yeah, so you were on a while ago, and I'm just going to kind of give like a brief overview because you have led the most interesting life so far. I am just in awe of you because you are the perfect example of someone who just goes for what she wants. Like you don't sit around thinking about it or wishing for it or making excuses. You just make it happen. And I want everyone to hear your story and just all the different ways in which your life has like done twists and turns because I want people to see that it is possible to pivot and completely change the direction of your life. But first, you have to decide that you want it and you have to give yourself permission to go for it. And honestly, like no one does that better than you. I really mean that. And I think you probably need to hear it more because you probably don't see yourself that way. But from the outside looking at you, it's like, oh my gosh, how has she done all of this? And so, just to give an overview of a lot of what we talked about in the last episode with her, you joined the Marines. Then you went into law enforcement. From there, you moved to Texas. You became a successful realtor. Now you're an author, soon to be TEDx speaker, which I'm just so excited for you, so proud of you. Oh, and by the way, you're a single mom
Yes.
and you're in the running for Miss Veteran America and you're a medium. Like there's a lot going on in your life. So let's just start from the beginning because I think when people see you, I know when I first met you, it's like you have such a positive demeanor. Like you're always smiling, you're always cheering other people on. You would never guess that you had a really difficult childhood. And with all the odds stacked against you, you had this vision of becoming a police officer. And again, like you were willing to do whatever it took to get there, no excuses,
Yeah.
including joining the Marines in order to get the experience to be hired as a police officer. So,
Yeah.
can you just kind of walk us through that time in your life and like what was going on inside of you to be able to have that vision and then just be so bold in doing whatever it took to get there?
Yeah, I honestly, looking back as like a really young kid, I think it was around 4 or 5, my mom told me that that's when I started saying things like, when I grow up, like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a police officer. And like, I was infatuated with them. Like, I would, wave them down when we were driving. And back then, I grew up in the Bay Area. Police officers back then in the early 90s obviously weren't too loved. My mom was really young. She would drive around with no driver's license. And so, like, I was flagging them down as like a 5-year-old child in the back seat, like, frantically waving, and my mom would like slap my hand. She's like, "We don't talk to them, blah blah blah." I grew up with like a really it was like a toxic environment growing up for me. My parents had me at 16, and so I would spend some time with them, sometime like most of the time with my grandparents. So it was just like I was constantly being passed around, and me and my mom weren't close at all. Like she was dating a lot of really toxic men, which then obviously like interfered a lot with like my childhood, and it was just really, really bad. But I made a decision in my head like this is the career I wanted, and I was going to do anything and everything to just get it. And so growing up, like I said, like I had a really tough childhood, and I remember like being 17 years old and thinking like I just wanted to be out of my mom's house. Like I wanted to get away. Like I'm ready. Like I get really anxious when things don't feel like they're moving fast enough. And I get it. Like what you can't be a police officer at 17, but I had it in my head. I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go work for the Fremont Police Department, which was the town that I lived in at the time. And I'm gonna work there and I'm just gonna pick like get hired anywhere. I don't care if it's like a records clerk or whatever. Like I just want to get my foot in the door right after high school. And so I went on a ride along, and this was like I think a couple weeks after I graduated, and I ended up graduating early only because, again, I was rushing to get out of my mom's house and I was rushing to start my new life because I thought, high school was holding me back. I just needed to get out. And so I graduated early. I went on a ride along and I was just turned 18. Went on a ride along with Fremont Police Department and had the craziest experience there. I only got to ride out for a couple hours because right after we grabbed coffee, we ended up in a vehicle pursuit with another car. I ended up getting kicked out of the vehicle, out of the police car, because they couldn't pursue this guy with a ride along in the car. So my time got cut short, but then I ended up getting sent back to the police department by another officer. And I remember standing there and I'm right next to their armory. And this young girl, like, couldn't been older, like a year older than me or whatever, pops out and she just says, like, "Oh, we're hiring. You should apply." And I was like, "What? No. Like, I can't work here, even though like I'm like dying. I'm like, oh my God, I want to work here so bad." She's like, "You should apply. We're hiring." And then another officer said the same thing. He's like, "Yeah," he's like, "We're hiring in there. Why don't you put in an application? You could just do it online." And I was like, "Oh my God, like I can work here." Like it just but it took me so long to be able to come up with the courage to apply because again, like I had very, very low self-esteem. I thought of myself as like garbage pretty much. Like I felt like it was imposter syndrome. And so I had the application pulled up on my computer for over, I want to say like a couple weeks or something. And finally it just clicked. I was like, screw it. Like, what's the worst that could happen? So I applied, immediately got the job, ended up being in their armory in their equipment room for 2 years while doing school. Because you can't be a police officer until you're 21, but you can start applying at 20 and a half. And so I was like doing my time in there, going to school part-time at a community college in town. And finally, I was like, okay, like I feel ready. Like I'm going to apply for the police officer position in my department and then a couple others like San Francisco, Walnut Creek, all these like Bay Area towns. And so I started applying at all these different departments. And I would always get to the interview portion and they would just keep saying like, "You're so young, you don't have any life experience, like, like," and that was a big deal back then. Now I feel like anybody can be a cop. You could just apply straight out of college or whatever and they'll pick you up. But back then in 2000, I think it was like 2006, 2007, I could not get hired anywhere because I had no life experience. So finally I was like, okay, well, how do I get this like what is life experience? Like what do I have to do? And I remember some officers that I worked with at the Fremont Police Department that a lot of them were military veterans. And I was like, screw it, I'm joining the Marine Corps. Like, I was like, I'm gonna go big or go home. And so I ended up enlisting without no thought behind it. I remember waking up, I still to this day remember waking up and just be like, today's the day. I'm going to go to the recruiter's office. I'm going to enlist in the Marine Corps. I'm going to do 4 years and then I'm going to come back and then I'm going to get that position at the police department. And I did. I enlisted that day. I flew out to basic training in Parris Island a couple months later. And yeah, it was just chaos.
Okay, I want to stop you for a second because this is just something that like I think comes natural to you, but I want to point it out because number one, like you made the decision that you were going to be a police officer like long before you did. Like you just it wasn't
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I hope that like someday." It was like, "No, this is what I'm going to do." And it is insane what pieces will fall into place when
Yes.
you make that decision. Like the girl saying, "Oh, hey, we're hiring." And, just even like the thought of like, well, I'll go get experience in the Marines. Like,
Hmm.
would you have had the wherewithal to go through something so intense if you hadn't had that vision, that outcome of like, I want to be a police officer no matter what?
Yes.
And the other thing I wanted to point out is like, you're sitting there and you just like woke up and just decided, I'm going to go do this right now. And I think that's important. Like I always say, whenever you get an intuitive hit,
Hmm.
act on it immediately because usually what most people will do is say like, "Oh, I'll do it when I'm more prepared," or "I have to think about it." And what
Yeah.
ends up happening is then your logical mind comes in and gives you all these excuses and reasons not to, and then you never take action on it.
Yeah.
So you just did it. And okay, so I had to ask, like when you joined the Marines, were you still like the super like you're just this tiny, like super feminine, like you wear dresses
It
all
was
the
worse.
time?
It
I would
was
never
worse.
picture like you in the Marines.
It was worse. But yeah, going back to what you just said really quick, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that shit show. But going back is like there's a part of me ever since I was a kid, and I honestly I think it has a lot to do with how I was raised in a very turbulent and toxic environment. I always knew what I didn't want. I always knew from a really young age. I knew something was wrong. I didn't want that life. And so when I made the decision, like this is what I want to do, I'm really good at sticking to it. And then I don't know if it's reckless, and I joke about this all the time. I don't know if I'm just reckless or really dumb, but I don't overthink it. I just do it. And I don't know, like sometimes I can't tell if it's like my intuition or if it's just me saying like I'm just going to go for it. Like, screw it. What's the worst that can happen? And I'm not afraid of messing up. I know if I take the wrong path or I walk through the wrong door and it's the wrong one, I know I can pivot. I know I can get myself out of anything. And I've always had that confidence where I think, again, it comes a lot from my childhood being what it was. I've put myself in really bad situations or I didn't listen to my intuition. I've always gotten myself out of that situation. So, and that's what I hope like other women can realize is like if you walk through the wrong door, you're gonna be fine. As long
Yeah.
as I'm not dead, I can get myself out of this situation. And I tell myself that all the time because I do screw up and I do walk through the wrong door and I walk through the wrong path. And sometimes I'm so lost, but I'm like, okay, like I'm going to turn around, I'm going to reset, I'm going to go back, and then I'm going to start over. I guess I'm not afraid to just make a freaking decision and go for it and see what happens.
No, I think it's such a powerful question. Like, what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah.
That was what finally got me to quit my job because I was like, I asked myself that specific question. What's the worst that can happen? I fail. Okay, well, then I'll just go get another shitty job that makes me miserable. And when I
Yeah.
looked at it that way, I was like, okay, the worst case scenario is not what my mind was making it up to be. It's just
Hmm.
simply starting again with a new job. So I think
Yeah.
that's like a great thing to point out that, yeah, you're still scared and whatever, but
Yeah.
you're
It's
not afraid. Like,
terrifying.
that failing is not the end of it. You'll just
It's
pick yourself
not.
up.
And like even though like even the Marine Corps thing, like that was random. And I hate when people ask me, I always feel bad. They're like, "Oh my gosh, like what was your reason for joining the military in a time of war?" And I'm like, I wanted to be a cop and I couldn't figure out another way to do it. And I feel so bad because now, yeah, like you said, like I'm a semifinalist for Miss Veteran America. And one of the questions is like, why did you join the military? Like what persuaded you and stuff like that. I was like, I wanted to be a cop. Like I don't know.
But I feel like that's like a noble reason, though. You know what I mean? It's like it
Yeah,
might
I
look different
took,
than what other
yeah,
people are thinking, but it's still like you had a vision. And
I
I
did.
mean,
Yeah.
you joined the freaking Marines of all things to get
I'm
there.
a
Like
very
that's,
go big or go home kind of girl.
yeah.
And I knew like if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna go all the way in because I didn't like who I was. And that was like another thing. So getting back to the type of girl that I was in boot camp, I didn't like who I was. I didn't know who I was. I hated who I was. I had the worst self-confidence. I was severely underweight because like I didn't eat. I was battling anorexia. I hated myself. I didn't I used to not I used to tell myself all the time like I hate you, you're ugly, like you're not worth anything. Of course nobody's gonna hire you as a cop, like look at you, like you're a mess. And so like taking that into the Marine Corps was it was life changing. And I knew I didn't want to be this person anymore, and I knew the person that I wanted to be was somebody completely different, full of confidence, somebody who can do hard things, walk away with it, and be a completely transformed person. And so joining the Marine Corps for me, like, like there's a stigma around it. It was like, oh, it's the hardest branch of military to join, like the toughest boot camp. And yes, it is. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. They don't mess around in boot camp in the Marine Corps. And so I knew I was like, okay, like if I can get through that, I know for a fact I'm going to be an absolutely different person. And I was like, I'm still really girl. I love to dress up. I love hair. I love makeup. I love girly stuff. But It was worse back then. I had no self-confidence. Everything made me cry. I was super girly, and I did take that into boot camp. I took my personality into boot camp, which everybody did. There's 60 of us in the platoon in boot camp, and everybody's very different. We all come from different backgrounds. And so you have like the real tomboy girls that grew up in the deep South, the backwoods of Mississippi, that have been shooting since they were two. You get those badass girls. You have the girls that are coming from Los Angeles that are like, look like they're from LA. And then there's me. I don't even know who the hell I am, but I know I'm scared to death. And I cried a lot, mostly to myself alone in my bed every single night. But it definitely changed me. It changed me so much because I kept finding like things that I was good at, but I also kept finding things that I was really bad at. So it was, like I'm a natural runner. I didn't know that. I'd never ran in my entire life until I got to boot camp, and I realized like I'm a really fast runner, and so I prided myself on that. And of course, that's a huge win when you start to put yourself into really hard places and like really difficult positions that you cannot walk away from. You can't walk away from boot camp. You start to see like all the cool things that you are capable of and gifts that you never even knew you had. And then, of course, like there's the infamous rope story that I write about in my book and I've talked about on your other podcast. It's like I thought climbing a rope would be easy, and it took me several weeks to learn how to climb a rope. And then when I finally climbed the rope, I was like, holy shit, it was like the greatest accomplishment of my time at that time. It was because I watched myself get better every single day in real time for weeks. And so like realizing like, oh my God, that was one thing I never thought I was going to be able to do. I look back at that now as a 38-year-old woman, and I'm just like, if I could do that, I can do anything. That's like my quote unquote anchor point when I find myself in really difficult situations. I was like, Megan, like it took you weeks to learn to climb a freaking rope. Like you can get through this. Like it's going to take time. You're gonna, it might take a few weeks, but you're gonna figure it out. And so, like I said, I had a rough time. I had a rough time at boot camp. I don't think my drill instructors like me. We're fine now, obviously, like we're good now, but they had a lot of work to do with me. Like I was
It's
not easy.
it's so funny because looking back, like you look at that and think, if I could do that, I could do anything. But like I vicariously through you, I'm like, if she can do that, I can do this. Like I think after I read that story, I remember I think I sent you like a voice message because I don't remember what it was I had to do. It was like a podcast interview or something I was super nervous about. And I
Mhm.
messaged you and I was like, if you could do that, if you could climb that rope, then I can do this stupid interview. And like,
Yeah.
I feel confident now. And it just really like it changed my
Yeah.
perspective of like how I worry about some of the dumbest things, but yet like we're capable of so much we don't even realize until we're thrown into a situation like that.
Exactly. I feel like doing hard things is so good for your mental health. It is so vital to be uncomfortable every single day. You have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations every single day. I work out in a sauna. I literally do an hour of cardio in a sauna at 125 degrees because it makes me so uncomfortable because I know that if I can get through that shitty workout, I can do like anything else for the rest of the day is going to be easy. You've got to put yourself in uncomfortable situations to see what you're made of. And then after you walk away from that, you are going to feel 1,000 times more confident. You're going to feel so much better. Your mental health requires you to live in your uncomfortability zone, if that's even a word, uncomfortability.
Yeah.
You have to live out of your comfort zone. You have to. And
Well,
that's what
and
boot camp was for me.
boot camp was, but then, after that, like you did get into law
Oh,
enforcement like you had
yeah.
always wanted, which is incredible. But reading, I was able to read some of the chapters of your book ahead of time, which thank you for
Yeah.
that. But I mean, I think every chapter I cried because you don't realize all of the things that law enforcement has to go through. And I mean, you were in a situation where every time you went to work, you were faced with not just something that's uncomfortable, but like trauma that you don't really have time to process.
Yeah.
So there's that
Yeah.
aspect of it too. So do you want to talk about that a little bit? Like how long were you in law enforcement?
So I almost made it to my 10-year mark before I walked away from it altogether.
Okay, so
So
that we have
almost
to
10
talk
years.
about because I know in law enforcement, like you have obviously good benefits and like a potential pension. So
everything.
how do you just like leave that? Like this was your childhood dream, and then you just what made you finally decide like I'm not doing this? How did you work up the courage to do that?
Yeah. So we'll backtrack just a little bit. Like when I got out of the Marine Corps, my very last day, I got off active duty and I had 5 days to get myself from out of the Marine Corps into the academy. So I had 5 days to get my uniforms and everything else too. So I was like really struggling in that gap, in that little period, because again, like I'm terrified. I'm going in, I'm reinventing myself. I just did, I had just done 4 years in the Marine Corps as an active duty Marine, and now I'm going into another career that is going to completely, once again, alter my entire personality, my being, everything about me. Um, it's a weird transition, and you don't know who you are anymore because one minute I knew who I was. I knew that like this uniform, the Marine Corps uniform defined me. And that's what I was. Like I was a Marine. And now what am I? I'm a police officer. I'm a police recruit. And so it was a very dark time for me in that short transition. But then once I got to the police academy, there's no time to obviously sit there and try to figure out who you are. Like all of a sudden, like because like again, you have just like you have drill instructors screaming at you in boot camp, you have training officers screaming at you in the academy. So it's like starting all over again. Here I am back at ground zero. And so, like, okay, I'm a recruit now. I'm a 26-year-old recruit. So starting all over and pushing through that, getting through phase training and everything. And yeah, like law enforcement is another career that will push you out of your comfort zone in another way. And to me, and this is because my Marine Corps time, I feel like was very, very different than my law enforcement time. Law enforcement, of course, like was my dream job, and I went all in with law enforcement. The Marine Corps, I got by, and that's what I did. I feel like I kept my head low. I did everything I was supposed to do. I was good at my job. I was a great Marine, but I kept my head down and I pushed through because I knew the light at the end of the tunnel was my dream profession. I even put in for San Diego Police Department a year before I got out of the Marine Corps because I was ready to go. And so getting through law enforcement, yes, like completely different beast. And you are exposed to trauma day in and day out, especially working for a very large city. You are exposed to trauma every single shift. Like there's yes, there'll be some slow periods in your shift, but for the most part, you're going to go home with some new memory or new exposure to trauma. And although I was young and I was having fun, this is before I became a mom and a wife. I loved it. I also was working part-time in the Marine Corps still because again, like I had FOMO. I still was having a hard time trying to figure out who I was, and the Marine Corps to me was a safety blanket, and I didn't want to leave, I didn't want to let it go. And so I joined the reserves at the same time. So I was a part-time Marine, full-time cop, and living my best life. I worked 7 days a week. It was crazy. And so when I ultimately became a mom, that's when things shifted for me. And I wanted to slow down. I felt like my life had a new purpose. And I was so in love with this little baby. And then when I became a single mom, I started to try to figure out my exit plan. So I knew, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. This chapter is coming to an end, although this is what I've been working for since I was like 4 or 5 years old. The season was coming to an end, and that was scary because I didn't know what else am I good at? I don't know what else I'm good at. And that was a whole nother transition. But I all I knew is I wanted to be a full-time mom. But how am I going to make that happen as a single mom?
Right. And I feel like that's something that holds a lot of women back is like, well, I can't do it because I'm a mom or because I'm a single mom or because my
Yeah.
kids are young. And I don't think a lot of people realize the people out there doing that are those things too. Like I didn't know when I first met you that you were a single mom, and then when I found out, I was like, holy shit, like how are you doing all this? Like Wonder Woman. But it's true, like you're making these pivots in your life though to accommodate and it's okay that your whole life you wanted to be in law enforcement, but then you had this baby and like that shifted your vision for your life. Like
Yeah.
that happens. It's not your passion and your purpose isn't going to be just a linear like ABC line. There's going to be all kinds of twists and turns.
Hmm.
You just have to be empowered enough to follow that, to trust your intuition.
Yeah.
I'm sure your intuition was very loud at
It
that
was.
point guiding you.
I was like, there's no way I could do 20 years. Like, there's absolutely no way. I was barely seeing my daughter. 2020 was a shit show, especially for law enforcement. And I mean, yes, for the whole world, because obviously COVID, but 2020 is when we were having riots across the country.
Mhm.
And I didn't see my daughter. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Like I don't want to do this anymore. I didn't see my daughter for a few weeks. I had to fly in a family member to go stay with her because during the riots and stuff, like I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I knew I wanted to be a mom full time. I also didn't like it was a very dangerous time to be in law enforcement was during COVID. Law enforcement officers were dying left and right. They were just being shot. They were being ambushed. Obviously, like there was just injustice. It was a shit show going on across the entire country. And I obviously know it's a double-edged sword, you know, and we don't have to get into that, but I knew I was like, I don't want to do this if my daughter loses me. Because my ex-husband decided he was not going to be involved with us. So he decided to leave and not come back. I knew if she lost me, she would be losing her only parent. And so I decided, I remember during one of the riots, like it was middle of the night, we got called out, and I was told I was going to be on the right squad. I wasn't asked, I was told. So I was one of those officers on the front lines. And I remember standing there thinking, like, people screaming at my face, telling me all these terrible things about myself. And I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I can't do this anymore at all. So that right then and there, I remember I made the decision, like, I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to figure out another thing that I love to do. I'm going to figure something out. But I knew also I didn't want to be a cop anymore. I didn't want to be a cop anywhere else, but I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that. I just didn't know what I wanted to do.
So again, like this is a
Mhm.
pattern, right? Like you made the decision. Like in your
Yeah, I made
mind,
the
the decision was
decision.
already made.
Yeah.
Did after that point, like, did you ever question yourself whether or not that was the right decision, or you just knew like no matter what, like I need to get out and I'm not doing this anymore?
Yeah, you know the cool thing about making decisions, like when you are definitive in your decision, you're like, this is what I'm going to do, which for some reason I have that habit of like, I don't know if I'm being reckless or I'm being dumb.
No,
Like,
it's I
I
think it's
don't
a
know.
great
But
habit.
when I make a decision, I'm quick with making decisions again because I'm not afraid of screwing up. I've never been afraid of messing up because again, I'm confident enough to like, if I go through the wrong door, I'll pivot, I'll turn around and I'll self-correct. Fine. But I knew, like, as soon as I make a decision, doors open. And that's the cool thing about making a decision. Is like in anybody, if you actually sat down, whether you believe in manifestation, law of attraction, or whatever, like you have to actually sit down and think about a time where you made a definitive decision and then somebody or something happened that completely altered your course and put you on that road of what you wanted to do. It happens to me every single time. And by that time, I was already listening to you in my patrol car. I was listening to other law of attraction people. I was listening to manifestation podcasts. I was awake in 2020. That's when the world woke up a lot to law of attraction, the secret, everything. So I was like knees deep in all this shit. And I started realizing like, oh my gosh, like every time I make a decision, something happens, somebody comes into my life and I'm like all of a sudden I am on that path. So I decided, look, like obviously, like real estate is not my passion, but I used to journal and I would write. I'd be like, I am a successful Texas real estate agent. And I would write that and I would just write it just over and over again, just sitting in bed writing it. And I would say, I'm a Texas homeowner. There was no significance about Texas. I just knew I needed out of California. I needed to have a healthy separation away from California. I needed to get away. I've always liked the idea of Texas, which is crazy because um, I did tell my mom one time coming back from boot camp, we had a layover in Houston. I didn't know anything about Texas, but all I knew is we had a layover in Houston and I was starving and we went to Chili's. We had like a 5 hour layover and we went to Chili's and I remember sitting there eating my chocolate molten cake because that's the only thing I wanted was chocolate molten cake because they don't feed you chocolate in boot camp. So I'm sitting there and she's just watching me eat this entire thing. She's just sitting there watching me. And I looked up at her and I said, I'm going to live in Texas one day. And she's just like, what? And I'm like, I'm going to live in Texas one day. I really like it here. And she's like, we've only seen Chili's like in the airport. And I just remember thinking that. And so I was like, you know what? Like, I like the idea of Texas. Like, I think that's where I'm going to go be a real estate agent. And I remember my dad right before I left, he was like, you know, you're going into a career field where it's like referral based and people actually have to know who you are. And, you know, he's like, you can't just jump into real estate. And I'm like, yes, I can. Because he's a real estate agent in Northern California. And he's like, you're just going to go be a realtor in a state where you don't know anybody. And I'm like, yep, that's the plan. And again, I used to write it in my journal. I'm going to be a successful real estate agent. And it was crazy because before I left, I had very successful real estate agents in Texas wanting to interview me because they wanted me to come work on their team. And you know, I was just like, cool. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't even have a license when I went to Texas. So I get to Texas and I meet all these agents. They just came out of nowhere, girl. And that's what I said. Like, doors will open when you decide to just make a decision. Doors will start opening. And all of a sudden, I had these very successful agents wanting to mentor me, wanting me to be on their team. So I picked a team. And of course, like my first year in real estate, sold 34 houses, um, networked my ass off with all of these top performing agents. And then I started meeting women in the writing field, like authors and speakers. And I'm like, I love books. I've always wanted to write a book. I remember when I first got into law enforcement thinking like some of these radio calls would make an incredible story. And I told myself, I was like, maybe one day I'll write a book about all of this because this is insane. And so I started networking with all these like authors, and I got to meet you, and I met other women in these like speaking spaces, podcasting spaces, writing spaces. And I'm just like, that's what I want to do. And I remember the first time I met you was on one of your mastermind courses. And all these girls were making these decisions of like what they're going to do. Some were like, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to leave my 9 to 5 job. And all these women are doing things. And I remember the next call I came back and I was like, I'm going to write a book. And that was it.
I remember that call. I remember that call because
Yeah.
you were just so like, again, like you just decided. You're
Yeah.
just
I
like,
was like, I'm going to
I'm
write a
writing a
book.
book.
That's it.
And I knew you would. Like in that moment, I was like, she's gonna do it. Like she is
Well,
going to
because
follow through and write
you
this
made
book.
a comment that always sits with me, and I don't know if I ever told you about this, but I was thinking about it. You actually made a comment, like if because I don't know how we got on this conversation, but some of the girls were wanting to leave their 9 to 5 jobs. Some girls wanted to start a podcast, and you said something. You're like, okay, like well, if you want to be a podcaster, just do it. Just grab a mic. Just do it. Just be a podcaster. And then you said something. You said, if you want to be a writer, then just start writing. Open up your computer and just start writing. Now you're a writer. And I'm like, it is that easy. I don't have to overcomplicate this. I want to be a writer. All I have to do is just open up my Word doc and start writing. And it doesn't matter if I don't have a publisher, if I don't have this, I don't have that. Like, who cares? I want to be a writer. I'm just going to start writing. So I just started writing. And as soon as I made that decision, again, like random women just came into my life that are writers and they were like, let me help you. Like, let me mentor you. And all of a sudden, all these doors started opening. And that's how the whole thing started. Again, like anytime you just do it, like make a decision, don't be surprised when people start coming into your life that want to help you and mentor you. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I feel very lucky because I knew you from that point and got
Yeah.
to watch you through the whole writing process. And you sent me some chapters that were just
Yeah.
like so good. And it left me like wanting more, but also I felt very emotional. Like I don't get super emotional, like with books especially, but I would find myself literally every chapter you sent, I would be like in tears. So I think, I don't know, tell me, like the writing process, it almost seemed watching you go through it, like on the one hand, it was very
Yeah.
therapeutic,
Oh, it was like
but that
a
it also
yeah.
was like a lot of repressed
Oh, girl,
trauma.
that was crazy too. Like the entire writing process. I'm okay now, but so I had been in Texas for a year at that point. By the time I met you, I had already been at like my 12-month mark. And so I thought everything was fine. I was, you know, successful in real estate. I was saving to buy a house, like all the things. It was all good. And then I decided, okay, like I'm gonna write a book on trauma, like all the crazy things that I experienced, not realizing that when you start writing about trauma, it all comes out. And then as I was writing, I was like remembering things that I didn't even think about. Like I suppressed, as I'm writing about these like traumatic radio calls, I'm remembering everything in grave detail as if I'm writing the police report, as if I just got off that call and I'm sitting down to write the police report. All the details were coming in. And I was remembering things that were like, I suppressed that I didn't want to think about. And oh my gosh, like I would get done with a chapter and then I would have to go sit on the couch. And I remember the first one I ever wrote, because I did not write my book in order. I just wrote because that was another thing. Again, like you said, if you want to be a writer, just write. And I just started writing. And so I did not write my chapters in order. We are now. Now I have a coach that's helping me go through the book and we're actually making it into a book. But at the time, I was just writing and I wrote about a radio call that like it happened in the very beginning of my time in law enforcement, and as I'm writing it I was shaking. Like my body felt like I was actually there remembering every single thing. And I got done with that chapter, had to go sit, and I just started sobbing. And what sucked is I realized it was taking me like 2 to 3 days to recover from that chapter. And so I was like, what the hell's going on? And so 6 months goes by, I'm still writing, and I realize like I'm now in a dark place. And I remember thinking like something's really wrong. I'm very, very depressed. I start again, like, because my vibe is down. Now I feel like I'm not working as much. Like I'm just attracting negativity. Like I was really, really down. And it took my girlfriend Cindy to make a comment. And she's an active duty colonel in the Air Force. And she was like, you need to go to trauma therapy. She's like, this is PTSD. And I'm like, this isn't PTSD. Like, I never in 1,000 years thought I would ever have PTSD. I thought I was fine. It was PTSD. So I go to the VA. I get assigned immediately a trauma therapist, and we start working right away. And it's difficult. It is difficult. And it turns out one of the therapeutic practices that they do in trauma therapy is writing. And I didn't know
Oh,
that.
okay.
So
Yeah.
I got to keep doing that. So she asked me, there's different ways. There's talk therapy, there's different the rapid eye movement, stuff like that.
Hmm.
There's different ways to unpack trauma. One of them's a writing. And she was like, you were writing your trauma. She's like, that automatically unpacks it. And she's like, that is what you were doing to yourself. So in trauma therapy, the first 30 minutes of my session, I got to write. And it was great. So I could write about anything that I felt triggered me, or I felt like was really bothering me, or I was having nightmares about. Because again, writing my book sparked nightmares. And then I wasn't sleeping. I was having severe, severe nightmares, and things were triggering me a lot easier, more than normal. I would see something outside that reminded me of a radio call, like a mass casualty event, and then I would just start sobbing. And so I would get to go to trauma therapy, and I would just write, and it's paper and pen. And there's just something so powerful about writing with a paper and pen. And I would just unpack everything. And then I would get to just cry to her, and we get to unpack it together. So yeah,
Well,
do
yeah, it's
not
like you're
write a book without a therapist on speed dial. If
yeah.
it's trauma, make sure you have a therapist, because writing is a form of trauma therapy. Didn't know that. So,
Well, yeah, because your subconscious remembers everything, even if you consciously don't. And like writing, I feel like it's a very subconscious thing. Like whatever's on your
yes.
subconscious will come out. And I remember, I'm not going to spoil the story because it's in your book, but reading the chapter where like you had experienced something very like traumatic
Yeah.
and emotional. And as the reader, you're right there, like crying, like, oh my God, like shaking. And then you get in the police car and your partner's like, okay, we got
Oh,
another
that was,
call. And it was just on to the next thing, like no time
yeah.
at all to process. And that was when it like clicked for me. Like as a normal civilian, we have no idea,
Yeah.
absolutely no idea what law enforcement faces every single day, that they don't even have time. It's not like
No, but
even
that
I
takes
don't
time
want to talk
too.
about it. You don't even have time to talk about it.
Yeah, that takes time too to become that callous. And I hate to say it, but yeah, you have to be callous as a cop. Like you have
Yeah.
to. And there was a time where I stopped feeling And
Mhm.
like I felt nothing. And times where I look back, I'm just like, oh God, like I could have died, or that could have gone really, really bad. But there was situations or radio calls that I was in where I felt nothing, Stephanie. Like I could have somebody at gunpoint knowing that their vehicle was full of weapons. They just crossed the Tijuana, San Diego border with drugs in their van. And I felt nothing putting them in like handcuffs, like, and then walking away, getting in my car and going to another radio call. That's what my phase training officer, that specific call that you were just talking about, where I just got done with something very, very traumatic as a brand new trainee officer. And then he's just like, well, there's another call here. Let's go to that. And I remember looking at him like, are you fucking crazy?
Yeah.
Like, should I want to go home?
Yeah.
Like, I'm done for the day. And that I was like, I'm done. But I remember looking at him and then like looking back at the steering wheel, putting the SUV in drive and being like, shit, I guess we're gonna go take a rape call. And that's what we went to. We went from one traumatic call to another. And I just remember thinking like, I gotta get it together. Like I've got to be like as callous as he is because like I can't show any emotion at all. Like they don't want new trainee officers to show emotion. Like again, like I remember being on for like 8 years and looking at these new officers. And if I saw one of them even have a little bit of a tear in their eye or feel emotional or look like they were about to break down, I would be like, go get your ass back in your patrol car and get your shit together. Looking back, I'm like, oh God, like I was the problem. I went from an officer who was like emotional and like felt and had all these feel like normal people. And then I became the problem where I was then telling newer officers, like, go collect yourself. Like, if you need to go take a minute. And I was mean about it. Like, what the hell? But that's because, like, you've got to become callous. I don't want to be
You're in like
callous.
survival mode,
I
like you
know.
just to get through the day. Do you care if I read one of your Instagram
No,
posts?
yeah.
Because it was like, for me, I know it was meant for like law enforcement, but just for me reading it, I was like, oh my, it was one of
Yeah.
those things that just hits you deeply. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a carousel post, and it starts out with, Megan, what you're experiencing isn't weakness. He said it's what happens when someone survives by staying busy for too long. He explained that when you wrap your entire identity and self-worth into a profession, especially one built on service and adrenaline, and then you leave it, you don't just lose a job, you lose yourself. He said your uniform doesn't give you purpose, you gave the uniform purpose. The job distracted you. It gave your nervous system something to focus on, something to run toward. And now that it's gone, your body finally feels safe enough to release everything that you never processed. And then he told me something I will still carry with me. You've never met yourself without a uniform. And she's still there, but she's been suppressed for a long time. Like I have
Yeah.
goosebumps all over
That'll
because
be in
it's
book
like,
two. There's a story behind that one that's going to
yeah.
be in book two.
But it's
So,
like all of that adrenaline that, just caused you to like really suppress everything. Eventually it's going to come out, right? I mean, and
it's going
that's
to catch
really
up.
what the writing process did for you is start to bring
Yeah.
that out, which I think was unexpected, right?
100%. But I didn't know that a form of therapy is writing. And so, again, like as I'm unpacking this, I'm learning a lot about myself. Like, I didn't even know, like, yes, I know PTSD exists. I know there's law enforcement and military people that, like, that have it, but I never thought of myself as having it. I never once thought that it would be me. And then when you leave the profession, and it doesn't matter if you're writing or doing anything. I feel like when you leave the profession, it's gonna all start bubbling back up. Things that you didn't process, you're gonna automatically start thinking about those things. You're gonna be triggered a little bit more. Things are going to come up that you haven't thought about in a long, long time. So yes, like you can be callous your 10 to 20 years in law enforcement, be distracted, go to radio call so that you don't ever feel anything. But just know, like, the day or like that year when you exit out, not only are you going to lose your complete identity, you're going to go through identity crisis, which is what I did. And you don't know who you are. You feel like you don't have a purpose anymore. You feel worthless, but you're going to start remembering things that you never process. And some of those things are going to be from like the beginning of your career that you thought you completely forgot about. So, but that's the type of environment law enforcement breeds
Yeah.
is you're going to keep your mouth shut, you're going to do your job, and that's it. And then they don't care about you once you leave. They
Mhm.
don't reach out to you. They don't make sure that you're getting your self-care. I mean, that's why they say a lot of first responders and law enforcement officers, they pass away after 5 years, whether it's heart-related issues or it's suicide. They said you usually have about 5 years after you exit the profession to live, and they're not wrong. So I was not going to be one of those statistics.
Right. Well, and I feel like this writing the book and all of this trauma that like came back and came out sort of led you though to like your purpose because now this is what you're going to be
Yeah,
talking about, right? Like you're speaking on stages, you're going to be bringing this problem
to
into
light.
the public eye, which,
Yeah,
like I said, I didn't realize. I mean, you kind of do, like you might have an inkling, but I did not realize at all until I read your book, like just how traumatic a job like that is. And no one in the regular world kind of like sees what's happening behind the scenes,
hmm,
and the people that are experiencing it are hiding it. And so now I feel like you're part of the solution because you're this is what you're going to be talking about to help people in
which
law
was
enforcement.
that was by accident. That whole thing was by accident too. Like I knew I wanted to write a book on my time in law enforcement, but I wanted to write it in a way where any woman, it doesn't matter if you work at Chili's or you're a major CEO of some huge company. I wanted any woman to be able to pick it up and be able to see themselves in the story. So I wrote it in a way where, yes, we're talking about my law enforcement time, but I wanted any woman to be able to pick it up and see themselves in the stories and be like, wow, like I wanted to inspire them. So I thought I was going to be this motivational speaker. I was going to be the fun girl at women's conferences, and I was going to be on stage. We're gonna dance to Patti LaBelle. Like we're gonna like inspire each other, right? I thought that's the type of motivational speaker I wanted to be. And then after I started releasing some of those chapters, I started getting reached out by other law enforcement officers that are also retired that speak, that get paid so much money to speak about the like the organization and the toxicity in the department and PTSD. And I'm just like, no. I remember telling my speaking coach, like, because I told her, I was like, I got reached out to by this huge platform. There's this law enforcement agency in Oklahoma that reached out to me and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. And she's like, do it for practice. And I was like, I don't want to talk on a huge stage in front of thousands of disgruntled police officers. That's not what I want to do. I don't want to be in a room full of men. I want to be in a room full of women. And I want to talk about what I want to talk about. I want to fun topics. Like I want to motivate women. Like, yeah, leave your 9 to 5. Screw it. Move to Hawaii and be a surf coach. Like I thought that's what I was gonna do. And all of a sudden, all these different platforms and podcast people came out of nowhere and they're like, we want you to be on the podcast. We want you to speak here. We want you to do this. And my speaking coach is just kept telling me, she's like, okay, like this might not what you want to do all the time, but she's like, use it as practice. But now I'm thinking like, well, crap, like, is this the universe's way of saying, look, we primed you so that you could shed light on these issues? Because they're like, if you're suffering, think about how many other people are suffering too. And there are women as first responders. Like, yes, I want to be in front of a lot of women. I don't want to talk to men. Men are gross to me. No, no, they're not gross. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's just, I feel like I can't connect with men. But, I keep thinking like, I keep getting asked to do these things. Maybe I've been primed to do them. Maybe I need to reach into it and see, okay, is this my next avenue of approach? Like, is this what I'm going to be doing? Because the stars are aligning. And again, this whole thing happened by accident. I never thought I was going to be going down this path.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's interesting because when you talk about these different stories of when you were in law enforcement, I relate to them, even though I've never been in anything remotely close to law enforcement. But I think like people need a metaphor or like an analogy to kind of
Yes.
like take these ideas and apply them. And for me, like that's it's like an analogy for any type of job, any type of career that is just relatable. You're just using your experience in law enforcement to get that
Yeah.
point across. But at the same time, I do think it's incredibly valuable for people that are still in law enforcement because it sounds like there's not a lot of people talking about it and
Yeah.
understanding it and that truly get it. So, I mean, is this what is your TEDx? Are you allowed to say what your TEDx talk is going to be about? Like, what are you hoping
Yeah.
to share on stage?
So I'm using again like a very personal experience that I experienced was losing my identity and how so many people, whether you're a first responder, military member, and talking to you, corporate, which I didn't even think about, what we do is we tie our entire self-worth and our personalities into our career. Like that is who we are. We are like, especially the military and first responders are like known for that. Like that's what they are. Like they act like that when they're off duty. And I know a lot of law enforcement officers that still act like cops when they're not even working. And so their entire personality is tied up into this profession. So then one day you're going to leave it, whether you get medically retired, whether it's just time for you to get out, whether something happens in life where you are forced to leave. Um, the suicide rate is high after these people exit their profession because they feel like they have no purpose, they are worthless. And that's how I felt. And it's what's crazy is like, I learned the hard way that like my profession never gave me purpose. My uniform didn't give me the purpose. I gave the profession purpose. And that's what I want to talk to other high achievers, professionals in, I want to express to them like, look, like, do not get wrapped up in this. Like, you are more than just a corporate worker, a CEO. Like, you are more than that military member, that first responder. You need to get a hobby. You need to figure out who you are without those things because those aren't permanent fixtures in your life. And I remember talking to you, Steph, and you're just like, oh my gosh, you're like, it happens in the corporate world. And I
Mhm.
remember going back to my speaking coach and I'm like, it happens to everybody. And she's
Yeah.
like, how? Yes, it does. And I was like, I just thought it was me. I just thought it was our professions. And that turns out it's everybody. We are brainwashed into thinking like this is it. We need to do this job for 20 years, retire, and then once we're done, we can figure it out after that. But we get brainwashed into thinking this is who I am, and without this job, I am nothing. So,
It's
yeah,
so funny because recently I came across on Instagram this reel and it was like a new like news coverage from back in the 60s of like the hippies. And there's like this hippie guy and he's like explaining what you're explaining. Like
yeah,
he's like when you ask somebody who they are, they're going to say their job, their career. Like
yeah,
society has brainwashed you to think that's all you are, but you're not. Like what are you without that? You're still somebody. Who is that? Like who is that person? But
yeah,
instead we're so conditioned to say I am a podcaster, I'm a police officer, I am, when you meet someone new, it's like, well, what do you do? And you talk about your career and it becomes your identity, but his whole point was like that's not the real you. The real you is there. Who's underneath that? And it just made me think of exactly what you're talking about and how we
hmm,
shape our whole identity around a job, but that's not really
yeah.
the real
I mean,
you.
and I feel like it's okay to tie yourself up in permanent fixtures. Like my favorite title is mom. Like I
Yeah.
love that title. I love being a mom. I feel like it's the only thing I've actually ever been so good at is being a mom. Like I can be mediocre at anything else, but the one thing I do feel like I'm good at and I feel proud to wear that title is mom. And it's a permanent fixture. It doesn't matter. The rest of my life, I will always be a mom. That is a
Mhm.
permanent fixture. I can totally tie my identity up in that. It doesn't matter. Um, Permanent things we can say, yeah, like yes, if you want to find out, okay, who am I? Yes, I'm Megan. I'm a mom. I love to go on hikes. I love to run, things that light you up. Your profession, yes, yes, your profession should light you up. It should, but it's not your entire identity. And remember, like, it's not giving you purpose and it's not giving you self-worth. Like, you are giving that thing self-worth and purpose. It doesn't matter, like, what uniform you're wearing. Like, that uniform is nothing without you. And it's so funny because the Marine Corps, I remember in boot camp, they brainwash you into thinking like this is it. You are a Marine. They even give you a new birthday. So Marines are infamous for
Really?
celebrating the Marine Corps birthday every single year. We celebrate it. We have Marine Corps balls. Even people that have exited out of the Marine Corps, excuse me, we celebrate the birthday. So there's veterans across the country that will still eat cake and they'll say, "Oh, it's my birthday," because the Marine Corps brainwashes you into thinking like once a Marine, always a Marine. You are not allowed to say former. You're not allowed to say ex Marine. Like another Marine will correct you very quickly. You have to embody, and that is your complete identity. Ask any Marine about that, and they'll tell you like, yeah, I'm a Marine. Like that's it. And it doesn't matter if you're in or you're out. But the problem with that is eventually you're gonna leave. And
Mhm.
you got to figure out who the hell you are. And a lot of them can't figure that out because they don't know who they are without that uniform or their rank. And they have a hard time transitioning out because of that. So that's again why we have alcoholics, drug abusers, people in and out of jails, high suicides rates, because again, like, and I know the Marine Corps is not the only branch that does this, but the Marine Corps is the one that I feel like goes big when it comes to making it your complete identity. We even have a creed that we would speak, this is my rifle. Without it, I am useless. Without me, my rifle is useless. Like it's like you have to tie your entire identity up into becoming this war fighter. And again, I understand it. I get it. Like we are dedicating ourselves to fight war. That's what we're being trained to do. But nobody's teaching any of these military members like how to be a civilian again. Okay, you've brainwashed me into thinking that I need to live in survival mode to survive. I have to survive in war. They teach you how to be a POW. They're teaching you how to be this way, but then they'll send you out into the world
Mhm.
without any civilian training or like giving you a transition period. They don't give you any of that. So, like, again, like you're losing yourself, your identity, your self-worth, your purpose. It's crazy.
It is interesting because when you look at the rates of suicide and just PTSD and everything else, a lot of times you think like, well, yeah, I mean, they were exposed to so much trauma, which is a huge part of it. But I haven't really heard anyone explain it this way. It's like, no,
Yeah.
when you leave, your identity is
Yes.
then in free fall. Like, who are
Hmm.
you?
They
And
don't
if
know.
no one is helping you through that transition phase, on top of all the PTSD, like, yeah, you're just leaving everyone on their own
Yeah.
to figure it out.
Yeah, it's like good luck.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can figure it out there in the world all by yourself. Like a lot of them don't, and I feel like you look back at like the other generations of military members, and like the Vietnam War and stuff like that. Like why is there so much homelessness? Because again, like the military is infamous. Like okay, like you served your time. Bye. And then
Yeah.
they go out into the world. They can't figure it out. They can't cope. They don't understand. Like there's a them versus me mentality, and so like you have like look like I go back to Vietnam because of how we treated those veterans back then. Like they couldn't trust civilians anymore because they were so brainwashed into thinking like the military was their home, their family, their identity, everything. So then and when they get pushed out into the civilian life, they don't have any relationship with these random strangers at these jobs. They didn't, go fight in a war, with these people. So like you make all these like sisterhood and brotherhood relationships, and then they have this me versus them mentality, and they just cannot cope. They can't figure it out, which then again leads to drug abuse, alcoholism, homelessness. And I mean, we do things a little bit different now, but that generation got it, I think the worst was the Vietnam veterans. They literally were abandoned.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's really sad. And I think if anyone can shed light on this, like it's you. I know your book is going to, your TEDx talk, and not just, I mean, like we said, this can be applied to literally everyone because we all
Hmm.
face it in just different varying degrees. And I'm calling it right now. I'm saying it on the podcast. I know I tell you this every time I talk to you, but I'm calling it right now. your next move at some point in the future is going to be a Netflix show. I don't know why, but like for years now, it's like this inner knowing. I'm like, yeah, she's going to be on Netflix. Like it's in my mind, it's already decided and it's just a done deal. So I'm just saying it
Yeah.
publicly so that we can come back and I can be like, see, I called it. But
Yeah.
I just know like there's so many big things coming your way and I'm just so proud of you and I'm so excited for this TEDx talk. Like that's wild. I mean, how many people
Yeah.
get to do that in their life?
Again,
Mm.
you make a decision, and when I tell you, like, people will start to come into your life, like, in unexpected ways and different avenues, and like, it's just wild. Like, you just got to learn to start saying yes. Do not overthink it. If somebody comes into your life and they're like, hey, like, I'm already successful doing this thing that you want to do, let me help you. You can't just be like, well, let me think about it. Tonight's not a good night. Like, I'm really tired. You have to get in the mindset of just saying yes, like, screw it. Yeah, you screw it. Like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try it. This person might scam me, whatever. But I'm gonna try everything. Um, yeah, like, because doors will open. Like I said, like, I never thought I would ever be talking to military veterans and first responders like ever. That's not the audience that I wanted. I thought I was going to be in groups of women, and then next thing I know, I'm being nominated for Miss Veteran America 2026, and I'm like, okay, that's also something that's has to do with the veteran community. And again, like, why do I keep finding myself in rooms on accident, almost on accident, that like again, like has something to do with the book that I'm writing, the topics that I'm speaking on. Um, it's just wild. You just have to keep going. And I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Let's just keep going. Let's just see where this leads because this is getting interesting. So,
See, and this is why I wanted to have you on because it's like there's no way you ever could have predicted
no.
all of these things and that all of these opportunities would just kind of show up out of nowhere. It's not by accident, it's like you made that decision. And so you're open to all of these things that are right there, right in front of
Mhm.
you. They're right in front of everyone. You just don't see it
You don't
if you
see it.
haven't yet made that decision. And so, moral of the story, like do that, make that decision. Don't wait, don't make excuses, don't say you're going to do it later. Just decide.
Yeah. Just decide and then just say, screw it. What's the worst that's going to happen? I tell myself all the time, because like I said, like I'm not perfect. I do get myself in bad situations, but I'm just like, I have to remind myself, like before I start having a panic attack, like I'm not going to die. Nothing's going to happen to me. Nothing's going to happen to my daughter. And that's all that matters. If I can live through this, worst case scenario, if I screw something up so bad where it's financial stress or whatever the case is, I'll just go move back in with my friends, or I'll just go to Florida and move in with Stephanie. Like I'm always going to be taken care of, is what I'm trying to say. Is like I'm not gonna die. The worst thing in the world to me is losing my child, and she's not gonna die. So like if the worst thing isn't actually going to happen, I'll be okay. And I have to tell myself that because again, like, and you and I kind of chatted about this before we hit record, but like, um, it's just like you're gonna have those waiting periods where you feel like nothing's happening. You're gonna make a decision and you're like, okay, this is it. Like this is what I'm gonna do. And then all of a sudden, like nothing happens and you're super stagnant and you feel stuck. Like you've got to learn how to like not panic in those slow times and realize like there's something building up. There's things that are happening in rooms that you are not a part of or you can't hear. There's conversations about you being had. And then usually you'll find out in a couple of weeks or a couple of months when somebody calls you or comes out of the blue and says like, okay, well, we heard about you. We've been told that you do this. Can you come help us with this or that? So I have to remind myself too in times of like slowness or stagnation, like I'm okay. Learn to enjoy the quiet because it's about to get really busy really soon. And that's what I tell myself too, is like these slow times I should be just relaxing or writing or taking my time with life because something big is happening and every single time it does. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't look like
Oh, I
anything's
feel that.
happening.
I
It
feel
is.
that especially for you. Like, relax, enjoy the quiet now because there's a
Yeah.
lot of big things coming for you.
Yeah.
And I think you just worded that so well because we all go through that. We all
Yeah.
think things aren't happening when behind the scenes there's so much happening. You just have to hold the faith and just trust. Like, keep that vision. You made the decision, therefore it's happening.
Exactly. Trust yourself. Don't get distracted. Don't do anything that's gonna take you off that path. I feel like where a lot of people kind of fall off their path is like they see that nothing's happening and then they're like, shit, I might as well just go back to my old job. Like nothing's happening. I'm so scared. It's scary. Trust me, there's been times where I'm like, I need to go apply for the closest police department right now. And then bam, at the very last minute, something always happens that keeps me going. I have to remind myself that too. It's like, do not get distracted. Do not fall off the course. Keep going, keep your head down, keep going, keep pushing. Something's coming out. Like I said, like there's so many times where I feel like people will just be like, all right, I give up. I'm throwing in the towel. They don't wait it out and they'll go back to their old job and say, well, I tried it. It didn't work for me. I have to remember the story 3 feet from gold. That is one of my absolute favorite stories is, and do you remember the 3 feet from gold? I think
Yes.
Napoleon Hill talked about it where
Yep.
those gold diggers gave up, sold all of their equipment, gave it all away. The new people came in and literally dug only another 3 feet, and there was all the gold. And so I have to tell myself, like, I am 3 feet from gold. Keep your head down, keep going. It's right there. So
Oh, so well said. That's such a good point to end on. Ah, Megan,
yeah,
thank you so much for coming on. I wanted people to hear your story because I know every single one of us, we face imposter syndrome. We think things aren't working for us. We tell ourselves all kinds of stories and excuses. And you're just a good example of like what happens when you don't listen to that and you just do it
yeah.
anyways and you make a decision. So thank you for coming on. Where can everybody
Thank you.
find you?
Yeah, so at the Megan Worth on Instagram, and you could I'm bigger on Instagram right now, so you could just find me on Instagram, and I'm sure you'll just link it in the show notes. But please say hi. Like I'm a girl's girl, so if you're a female listening, I will definitely follow you guys back. Just say hi, and yeah, no, that's my biggest platform right now is Instagram. I'm an Instagram girly, so
Yes, you are my entertainment. I love your outfits and your videos and just everything. And you're a girl's girl. Like you're
yeah.
always cheering me on and commenting on posts. And I really appreciate it. You're just an amazing human being. So
Thank you,
everyone
girl.
go follow her. I'll post it in the show notes as well. And good luck with your TEDx talk. I know you'll be back on the show many more
Yes.
times. So there will be more to come once you get there. And thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode.